Hi guys. So in this session, I want to explain one of the most important international events of the recent times. That's G20 Johannesburg Declaration of 2025, which was adopted even after the United States boycotted the summit and also warned others not to proceed. So remember last prelims, you got questions from international organizations, the founding members. They can twist it around with the founding members and the new members and the summit themes, etc. So in that context, it's very important. And of course, not only for prelims, but for your GS2 international relations, GS3 economy and environment part, even essay also, and mapping related questions, especially in prelims, they can ask you. So let's break down in a structured and more simplified way, which will help you in both prelims and mains. See, there was a time when the US opposed something. It was almost impossible for the rest of the world to move forward. But you see now the global dynamics are changing rapidly. The countries of global south are now asserting themselves and look at the major powers. They are no longer hold the same unchallenged authority which they had earlier. So the G20 Summit 2025, which was hosted in Johannesburg, South Africa, is a perfect demonstration of that shift, how the power dynamics or the global dynamics are changing. So remember the venue, Johannesburg, South Africa, and the importance of this is there's the first ever G20 summit which is hosted in Africa, that again making it historically very significant. And out of this summit, which came a 122-point leaders declaration, which is adopted despite the US, walking out and opposing it. So because of all these, this is going to be very important. And see, uh, look at this from mapping perspective. They can ask you mapping related question. So where Johannesburg lies? So this is how you'll be preparing, right? Johannesburg lies in the northeastern part of South Africa. So UPSC can ask map-based question from this, right? Important bordering countries. So you need to note down what are the countries which shares border, right? So Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. So this country was in news either because of this or because of some other reason. Because of that, this kind of questions they can ask you. And the small enclave nation, Lesotho, which again lies completely inside South Africa. So see, such mapping points matter very much important for prelims. So when you are reading this news, you also need to connect it with the map as well, so that you will be able to solve and remember that kind of questions as well. Now the bigger question that I need to answer is for GS2 perspective, why did United States boycott the G20 summit? See, the official reason I'll tell you that's related to human rights, that US claimed that South Africa was violating the rights of white African or minority, calling it like a racial persecution, sorry. Okay, so South Africa denied this by saying that there is no such kind of targeted persecution exist, and any violent incidents affect multiple communities and not just one specific group. So there is no such targeted persecution against the white, African or minority. See, when we are preparing for UPSC, we must understand that official reason in geopolitics are rarely the real reason. So there could be something which is hidden. So when US is talking about, so for example, when they restrict imports, they will say that, reason something like leather imports they are stopping. Then they'll say it is to protect the animals. But the reason is they want to reduce the import. Simple. So the real reason could be something else. So we need to go behind that one, right? So what is the real geostrategic reason, right? That's what we need to know. See, especially under Trump, US rejected many things, right? The climate change commitments, the climate justice principles, global south oriented debt relief, discussion on critical minerals, value addition, and then diversity and equity frameworks. All these have been rejected. But the Johannesburg G20 agenda focused exactly on this. They are talking about climate action, they're talking about renewable energy, debt restructuring, and then the critical minerals, reforming global institutions, African priorities. So the US opposed the entire theme of the summit because whatever US otherwise opposing, that became the theme of this Johannesburg summit. So US opposed it outrightly, but the official reason was related to human justice and other things, right? So see, what they have done is they have pressured South Africa not to adopt any declaration without them. What South Africa did, simply refused it. And that clash that reflected in a deeper transition. That means now that's what I started off with. The global power is no longer unilateral. The global south have began shaping the world order now. So the global south is also getting that significant, that authority, the unmatched or unchallenged authority that they used to enjoy before, no more there. Very important for your GS2, this diplomatic fallout between US and South Africa. So there were public disagreements, there were harsh exchanges, and South Africa was accusing the US to for trying to undermine the summit, and then the US expressing the displeasure. All these were seen and visible and in the news, and there were visible tensions similar to early Trump-Zelensky style friction was also there. So that shows that growing shift again. Guys, these can be the statements like multilateralism cannot be held hostage by any one country. Discuss, comment. So in this context, you can relate it, right? So again, how this adoption happened, this declaration adopted without US. See, this is unprecedented. Normally what happens, there will be negotiations and then consensus, and after that declarations adopted, right? So discussions, negotiations, consensus, on the basis of that declaration adopted. But in Johannesburg, on day one, the host country, that's South Africa, announced that the declaration is finalized and it will not be renegotiated. So it's not as usual, right? Normally negotiation, consensus, adoption. Now here it's final, declaration is final, there is no negotiation or renegotiation. So the entire document was drafted without the US participation, and finally all G20 members accepted it. That's what happened, right? Except Argentina, which withheld the endorsement due to ideological differences, but it did not block the adoption. The rest of the countries have adopted, and that's historic because G20 functions on consensus. But here you see, despite that, it got adopted. Yet the declaration was passed even when the major power opted out and also warned others not to participate or get it adopted. So let's look at the key themes of 120-point declaration also. Let's try to summarize the major themes, not everything, whatever is relevant for UPSC we'll discuss. First one related to climate change and renewable energy. So strong language on climate urgency, and then rapid scaling of renewable energy capacity, commitment to phase down the emissions, climate justice priority for developing nations. Go through all of these in detail later, but for you to write an answer, you just need these points, okay? And just one more sentence along with that. Second theme was related to the debt relief of for the South developing countries. See, developing economies face unsustainable debt. That is one of the issue, high interest burden, and then limited fiscal space. So the declaration is now pushing on this debt restructuring and fairer lending mechanisms and more support for vulnerable states. So that's one thing. See, in fact, all these US was opposing all these, especially under Trump. Now, these are becoming the important themes. So that's why naturally they didn't participate, right? They opposed it. Third is related to the critical minerals and Africa's value chains. Guys, each of these are important for different subjects. First one, climate change, renewable energy, environment, ecology. Debt relief for developing countries, that's related to economy. Critical minerals, Africa's value chains related to your geography. So Africa has huge deposits like cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese. And historically, if you see, developed countries extract raw materials cheaply from these countries and process them in their country. And you keep the value addition outside Africa, and Africa remain underdeveloped. So this is what happened. And then they find the markets also here, right? This happened with India also. For example, they have a cotton industry over there. So what they'll do is they can take the cotton from here, raw material, value addition and everything is done there. And finally, the finished products, Liverpool, Manchester clothes has been sold in Indian markets. So value addition happens over there. So this area will remain underdeveloped where the raw material is there. So the G20 declaration, what their demand is, value chains must be strengthened within Africa itself. Mining, processing, manufacturing must happen locally. Not only mining and taking it somewhere else and do the value addition there, that area get developed and you bring it back here, sell it here, that won't work. Mining, processing, manufacturing should happen locally. So that will ensure more job creation, technology transfer should be there, and higher value capture and reduced exploitation and developing economy. The economy will also get developed. So this is a huge shift in global economic thinking. Fourth was related to global governance reform. So one, I connected with environment, ecology, then economy, and then geography. Now this is related to governance and general IR. So there's a strong push for reforming UN Security Council, IMF, World Bank. So these institutions, in fact, do not reflect 21st century demographics. So the present economic realities is not captured, and the emerging powers is not represented properly. The global south's aspirations is not has been taken into consideration. Apart from that, the next theme that is related to GS2, the next portion, the equality, inclusiveness, social justice part. So you can connect it with your, I hope you can understand, it's connected to your syllabus. That's how you need to learn and understand. So that's why I've taken these important themes rather than taking entire 122 points. So here, gender equality, social justice, inclusive growth, sustainable development goals, aligned commitments. And the next is again connected to your GS3, peace and security related. So that's how I'll connect. So GS3 as of now, how much is connected? Economy, you got connection, and then environment, ecology, you got connection, security, you got connection. And when it comes to GS2, you got connection with equality, social justice part, and the governance reforms. GS1, you got the connection with the geography, minerals, and other things, right? So here, we were talking about the peace and security, right? So there is a condemnation of terrorism in all forms, and there is a need for stable global supply chains and food security concerns in climate vulnerable regions and strengthening the resilient agricultural system. So just go through that, any articles if it is available or our current affairs also. Now, what are India's 6 major initiatives at the G20 Summit? See, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi also proposed 6 major global initiatives, all of which align with India's leadership vision. So let's understand each of them deeply because that's very important for you. First one, global repository of traditional knowledge. So the world has enormous traditional wisdom, Ayurveda, yoga, herbal medicine, indigenous techniques, local solutions to the climate and also health. But these are nowadays what happens is getting disappeared, right? So India proposed creating a global digital, repository. So, a future generation can benefit from this. So what will be the benefit? There will be a cultural diplomacy, soft power, right? And then sustainable knowledge sharing, all these will be there. Second, Africa Skill Multiplier Program. So India committed to training almost 1 million trainers in Africa. So 1 million people will be trained in Africa. Now, why trainers? Because see, 1 million trained trainers can train. If I can train 10%, that 10% can train another 100%, and they can train another 1,000%. So if you remember, when Britishers came to India, Macula Minute, they decided to train few. The idea was those few will train others, but that never happened. But here, you are going to train 1 million trainers. So these 1 million trained trainers can train another 10 million, who in turn can train another 50 million, and that can extend to 100 million. So this is a capacity building at large scale. So how it will work out? It strengthens employment, it increases productivity, economic development, human capital formation, and this is one of the most powerful proposals at the summits. This is a great, most powerful proposal. Third one, guys, all these are important. I don't know whether I can capture everything in the single discussion itself. See, the global health crisis rapid response team. COVID-19 exposed the global weakness. We realize that. So now this, in terms of slow response, the poor coordination, supply chain breakdowns, lack of preparedness. So these were the weaknesses. Now what India proposed is a global health rapid response mechanism that will ensure these weaknesses will be solved, like faster deployment, joint crisis management, better pandemic readiness, and shared medical resources like that. Next is drug terror nexus initiative. So drug trafficking finances terrorism. So most of the terrorist financing is coming from drug trafficking, human trafficking, like that only. So money moves through, smuggling networks, cryptocurrency channels, hawala routes, cartels, organized crime. So what India proposed is there should be a global initiative to break the drug terror funding chain. So if you can break that drug terror funding chain, then you can to an extent curtail or control the terrorism, because these funds is what used over there. So that will strengthen the security, the public health, and the border management as well. The next one, global satellite data partnership. So see, space technology today is very much essential for beyond many things that we have seen before. Now it's important for agriculture, disaster management, climate monitoring, urban planning, water resource mapping. Everywhere it is important. So what India proposed is a global satellite data sharing arrangement so that the countries, especially the developing ones, the global south ones, can access space data for their development also. very important, right? But the last one that's related to the critical mineral circularity and urban mining. See, the world is entering a scenario like a mineral intensive phase, right? Because electronic vehicles are getting importance. So EVs, solar panels, batteries, AI servers, even crypto mining, semiconductors. So demand for critical minerals are exploding. So what India proposed is urban mining, recycling. Recycling cost will be higher, but that also need to be done. Circular economy for minerals and sustainable extraction methods. So if you do that, that will reduce the dependency, the environmental damage, the cost of raw materials will come down. So it will become affordable also. And that will enhance that long-term resilience. Now the question is, why the US less G20 declaration matters? US is not there. How does it matter? See, this is a core analytical part. Now, why it matters? Firstly, see, G20 functioned without US for the first time. That's first in history. So that shows what no single nation can veto global decision. And multilateralism is now becoming multipolar. And global south is taking charge. So there is a shift of power. Now, if not shift of power, that authority is challenged. Second, empowerment of Africa and the global south. For decades, Western countries dominated the narrative. Developing countries were completely marginalized. They exploited. But this summit that highlighted the African issues, that prioritized global south demands and focused on the climate justice and push for debt relief and push for mineral value addition also. Now again, there is a question of legitimacy, right? G20 works on consensus, and here there is no consensus. If a major power stays out, will they implement decisions? And how effective will the declaration will be? Will the US resist these reforms? So that create uncertainty for the future. So there is a question of legitimacy, but this happened because why there is such kind of question is because G20 normally work on consensus. I told you that all things in the beginning itself. Now, next year's G20 will be hosted by United States. So there will be a tension for 2026 G20 Summit because it's going to be hosted by US. So again, that of course raises critical questions. But anyway, for you as of now, these analysis what required. By the time you write the mains, that will be over. So you are not bothered about 2026. But analysis is important. So here, will the US continue these Johannesburg initiatives there or not? Will Trump reverse the agenda? Will there be a friction with African countries? So again, that will be a question. Will the US introduce its own agenda? Will the global south push back? So the world will closely watch 2026 summit because of this, as US have taken a step back and next summit will be held in US. So the world is watching. Now, see, G20, this declaration, Johannesburg Declaration is not just a document. It's a symbol of global rebalancing, and you can expect question connecting to India, connecting to the other globe sites and everything. So this is something which I'm expecting for sure that will be getting in prelims as well as in mains. If not in prelims, mains, right? Or both. So it was a symbol of global rebalancing or restructuring, a power shift. So that shows that we have seen rising power of the global south, right? The declining unilateral dominance of the West, India's growing global leadership and India's participation, Africa's new voice in the global world politics, and the emergence of multipolarity, right? Climate and development becoming central to the global diplomacy. And the fact that it was adopted despite US boycott makes it even more historic. And the fact that this was the first summit G20 held in Africa also make it historic. So this event, I am sure that it will shape the global governance, climate commitments, economic reforms, mineral supply chains, geopolitical alignments, and in fact, will be a favorite topic for UPSC. Either it mains you have potential in GS2, GS3, and prelims also, you can expect a question. So guys, that's all what I want to discuss in this video. I hope you got a great value to the time that you have spent here. See you in the next session.